The sharp knock at the door jolted Kyle from his morning routine. He glanced out the window, his heart sinking as he recognized the stern-faced woman striding up his driveway. Karen, the HOA president, was the last person he wanted to see right now. Steeling himself, Kyle opened the door. "Good morning, Karen. How can I help you?" Karen's lips tightened into a thin line. "I'm here about your music, Kyle. Your neighbors have filed multiple noise complaints, and I'm afraid I have no choice but to issue you a formal warning." Kyle felt a surge of frustration. "But Karen, you know my band only practices a few times a week, and we always stop by 9 p.m. I thought we reached an understanding about this." "An understanding?" Karen scoffed. "I'm sorry, Kyle, but the rules are clear. If this continues, I'll have no choice but to fine you or even take legal action." She thrust a stack of papers into his hands. "Here are the formal complaints. I expect this to be resolved immediately." As Karen stormed off, Kyle stared at the documents, his mind racing. He'd worked so hard to make his dream of being a musician a reality, and the thought of losing it all over noise complaints was infuriating. He had to find a way to resolve this, no matter what it took. Determined, Kyle hurried to the garage, where his bandmates were already gathered for their weekly practice session. "Guys, we've got a serious problem. Karen just issued me a formal warning about the noise complaints." The others exchanged shocked looks. "What? But we always keep it down, and we're done by 9 p.m., said Sarah, the lead vocalist. I know. Kyle ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "She's threatening legal action if it doesn't stop. We have to figure out a way to fix this, or my whole music career could be on the line." The band members fell silent, each lost in thought. Finally, Jared, the bassist, spoke up. "Okay, here's an idea. What if we reach out to the mayor's office? I bet they'd be interested to hear that the president of the HOA is trying to shut down a band that's been invited to play at the White House." Kyle's eyes widened. "The White House? You mean our performance invitation is still valid?" Jared nodded. "Yeah, man. I got the confirmation email last week. We're supposed to play at the Independence Day celebration next month." A glimmer of hope flickered in Kyle's chest. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. We'll use our White House gig to prove to Karen and the HOA that our music is more than just a nuisance. Maybe that'll get her to back off and let us keep practicing." The band members exchanged determined looks, all of them ready to fight for their dream. This was their chance to show the world what they were made of, and they weren't about to let a meddling HOA president stand in their way. With a newfound sense of purpose, the band sprang into action. Kyle immediately placed a call to the mayor's office, hoping to set up a meeting and enlist their support. "Hello, this is Kyle from the band Midnight Rhythm. I'm calling about an issue with our HOA president, Karen. We've been invited to perform at the White House next month, but she's threatening to shut down our practices over noise complaints. I was hoping to speak with someone who might be able to help us resolve this." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "One moment, please." Kyle held his breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was their one chance to turn the tide in their favor. Finally, a voice came on the line. "This is Mayor Simmons. I hear you're having trouble with your HOA president." "Yes, sir," Kyle replied, relief flooding through him. "Karen has issued me a formal warning, and she's threatening legal action if we don't stop our practices. But we have a gig at the White House coming up, and we really need to be able to rehearse." The mayor's tone was thoughtful. "I see. Well, this certainly sounds like a unique situation. Tell you what, why don't you and your bandmates come down to City Hall this afternoon? I'd like to hear more about this and see if there's anything we can do to help." Kyle's face broke into a wide grin. "Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. We'll be there. Thank you so much." After ending the call, Kyle turned to his bandmates, who were watching him expectantly. "Good news, guys. The mayor wants to meet with us this afternoon to discuss the situation with Karen. The tension in the room instantly dissolved, replaced by a sense of cautious optimism. Wow, that's incredible, Sarah exclaimed. Maybe he can help us figure out a way to keep practicing without any more trouble from the HOA. That's exactly what I'm hoping, Kyle replied. Simon, let's get ready. We've got an important meeting to attend. As the band members hurried to gather their things, Kyle couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of determination. With the mayor's support, they might just be able to overcome this obstacle and keep their musical dreams alive. All they had to do now was convince the city's top official that their music was worth protecting. The band arrived at City Hall, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They were ushered into the mayor's office, where a kindly-looking man with graying hair greeted them warmly. Welcome, welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you all, Mayor Simmons said, gesturing for them to have a seat. Now, Kyle, tell me more about this situation with your HOA president. Kyle took a deep breath and launched into the story, explaining how Karen had issued him a formal warning over noise complaints and how their upcoming White House performance was now in jeopardy. I see, the mayor said, brow furrowed in thought. Well, this certainly puts a different spin on things. Your band has been invited to play at the White House, you say? Yes, sir, Kyle replied. We received the confirmation email just last week. It's a huge honor, and we've been working so hard to prepare for it. Mayor Simmons nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. I can imagine. And this Karen person is threatening to shut down your practices, even though you keep the noise level down and stop by 9 p.m. That's right, Kyle said, feeling a surge of frustration. She's being completely unreasonable. We've been playing in this neighborhood for years with no issues, but now she's suddenly decided that we're a nuisance. The mayor leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Well, we can't have that, can we? A band that's been invited to perform at the White House should be celebrated, not silenced. He turned to the rest of the group. Tell me, how long have you all been playing together? About 5 years, Jared piped up. We've been working our way up, playing local gigs and trying to get our name out there. This White House invitation is a real game changer for us. Excellent. The mayor's eyes gleamed with determination. Then I believe we have a solution to your problem. I'm going to make a few calls, and we'll see if we can't put a stop to these noise complaints once and for all. Kyle felt a surge of relief and gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We really appreciate you taking the time to help us with this. Think nothing of it, the mayor replied, waving a hand dismissively. I'm always happy to support the arts, and your band's accomplishment is something to be celebrated. Now, let's get to work. With renewed hope, the band members exchanged excited glances. Perhaps, with the mayor's help, they could finally put an end to Karen's meddling and focus on their big White House performance. Over the next few days, the mayor's office wasted no time in springing into action. Kyle and his bandmates were summoned to a special town hall meeting, where the mayor himself introduced them to the gathered crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a moment to recognize a very special group of musicians in our community. Mayor Simmons began, his voice booming through the hall. The band Midnight Rhythm has been invited to perform at the White House's Independence Day celebration next month. A wave of applause and cheers erupted from the audience, and Kyle felt a surge of pride. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. A chance to show the world that their music was worthy of recognition. Now, as you all know, the band has been facing some issues with their HOA president, Karen, over noise complaints. But I'm here to tell you that we're not going to let that stand. The mayor's expression hardened. This is a prestigious honor for our city, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure these talented musicians can continue to practice and prepare for their big performance. Kyle exchanged a look of stunned disbelief with his bandmates. They couldn't believe the mayor was going to bat for them so publicly. To that end, the mayor continued, I've spoken with the city council, and we've decided to grant Midnight Rhythm a special permit to use the community center for their rehearsals. No more noise complaints, no more threats from the HOA, just the freedom to hone their craft and do us all proud at the White House. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, and Kyle felt a lump rise in his throat. This was more than they could have ever hoped for. With the mayor's backing, they could finally focus on their music without the constant threat of Karen's interference. As the meeting drew to a close, Kyle and his bandmates were swarmed by well-wishers, all eager to congratulate them and wish them luck. It was a far cry from the tense confrontation with Karen just a week ago, and Kyle couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Mayor," he said, shaking the man's hand firmly. "This means the world to us." "Think nothing of it, Kyle," the mayor replied with a warm smile. "You and your band deserve this opportunity. Now, go out there and make our city proud." With renewed determination, the band members left City Hall, their steps lighter and their hearts filled with hope. The long battle with Karen was finally over, and the road to the White House was now clear. The news of Midnight Rhythm's upcoming White House performance quickly spread throughout the community, and the band found themselves the center of attention. Locals eagerly followed their progress, cheering them on as they held their weekly rehearsals at the community center. Karen, however, was less than thrilled. She fumed as she watched the band's popularity soar, her face growing redder with each passing day. "This is an outrage," she spat, slamming her fist down on the HOA meeting table. "How dare the mayor undermine my authority like this?" The other HOA members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. They had never seen Karen this angry before. But Karen, one of the members, a timid-looking woman named Deborah, spoke up. "The mayor said they were invited to play at the White House. Isn't that a good thing for the community?" Karen's eyes narrowed to slits. "Good thing? Are you kidding me? That noise is going to disrupt the entire neighborhood. We can't have that kind of racket going on all hours of the day." Deborah shrunk back in her seat, regretting her decision to speak up. "We have to do something about this," Karen continued, her voice laced with determination. "The mayor may have given them permission to use the community center, but that doesn't mean I can't find another way to shut them down." The other HOA members watched in silence as Karen paced the room, her mind clearly racing with possible schemes. They knew better than to try and reason with her when she was in this kind of mood. Meanwhile, back at the community center, the band was in the midst of a rousing rehearsal, their music filling the air with a sense of energy and excitement. Kyle couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as he watched his bandmates pour their hearts into their performance. "All right, guys, that was awesome," he exclaimed as the final notes faded away. "I think we're really starting to nail this White House set." The others beamed, high-fiving each other in celebration. "Thanks to the mayor, we can finally focus on our music without having to worry about Karen," Sarah said, her voice brimming with relief. Little did they know, however, that their troubles with the HOA president were far from over. As Karen plotted her next move, the band's hard-won victory was about to be put to the ultimate test. The next day, Kyle was startled by a loud knocking at his front door. Cautiously, he peered through the peephole, his heart sinking as he recognized the familiar face of Karen. Steeling himself, he opened the door. "Karen, what can I do for you?" The HOA president's lips were pressed into a thin, angry line. "Kyle, I'm here to inform you that your band's permit to use the community center has been revoked." Kyle's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? But the mayor gave us permission to rehearse there. How can you do that?" "I have my ways," Karen replied smugly. "You see, I've been in contact with the property management company that oversees the community center, and they've agreed to terminate your permit. Effective immediately, you and your little band are no longer welcome there." Kyle felt a surge of panic. "But Karen, we have a performance at the White House in just a few weeks. We need to be able to rehearse." "That's not my problem," Karen snapped. "The rules are the rules, and I won't have you disrupting the peace and quiet of this neighborhood, even if the mayor says otherwise." Kyle opened his mouth to protest, but Karen held up a hand, silencing him. "I suggest you find another place to practice, Kyle. And if I hear so much as a whisper of your music, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. Are we clear?" Before Kyle could respond, Karen turned on her heel and stalked off, leaving him standing on his doorstep, speechless with rage. Quickly, he hurried to the community center, where his bandmates were already waiting, eager to begin their rehearsal. "Guys, we've got a problem," Kyle said, his voice shaking with anger. "Karen just revoked our permit to use the community center. She's kicked us out." The others stared at him in disbelief, their faces falling. "What? But the mayor said we could rehearse here," Sarah exclaimed. I know, Kyle said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Somehow, Karen managed to get the property management company to terminate our permit. We're back to square one." The band members exchanged desperate looks, their dreams of performing at the White House suddenly in jeopardy. "So, what are we going to do?" Jared asked, his voice tinged with worry. Kyle's jaw tightened with determination. "We're going to fight this, that's what. We're not going to let Karen ruin everything we've worked for." With a renewed sense of purpose, the band members gathered their equipment and headed out, determined to find a way to keep their musical dreams alive. Determined to find a solution, the band members huddled together in Kyle's living room, brainstorming potential alternatives. "Okay, let's think this through," Kyle said, pacing back and forth. "We need a place to rehearse that's not going to draw the ire of the HOA. Any ideas?" Sarah chewed her lip in thought. "What about renting a storage unit or something? I've heard a lot of bands use those for practice spaces." Jared nodded enthusiastically. "That's a great idea, and it would be completely out of earshot of the neighborhood." "Yeah, but would it be big enough for all of us to set up?" Kyle asked, skepticism creeping into his voice. "We'll have to check, but it's worth a shot," Jared replied. "At this point, we need to explore every option." The band members fell silent, each lost in their own anxious thoughts. The prospect of losing their chance to play at the White House was a bitter pill to swallow. Suddenly, Kyle snapped his fingers. "Wait a minute, I've got it. What about the old warehouse down by the docks? It's been abandoned for years, and it's huge. Plenty of space for us to rehearse." The others perked up, intrigued by the idea. "The docks, Jared said, stroking his chin. "That could work. And as long as we're not disturbing anyone, Karen can't really complain, right?" "Exactly," Kyle exclaimed, his eyes shining with renewed hope. "It's the perfect solution. We'll be out of sight and out of mind, and we can focus on nailing our White House performance." The band members exchanged excited glances, the weight lifting from their shoulders. With this new plan in place, they could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "All right, then it's settled," Kyle said, clapping his hands together. "Let's go check out that warehouse and see if it's a viable option." As the band members gathered their gear and headed out the door, a sense of determination and camaraderie filled the air. They weren't about to let Karen's scheming derail their dream, not when they were so close to the ultimate prize. The band members arrived at the old warehouse, their eyes widening in awe at the vast, open space. "Wow, this place is perfect," Sarah exclaimed, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. Kyle grinned, already envisioning their setup. "All right, let's get started. The sooner we can get this place soundproofed and ready to go, the better." Over the next few days, the band worked tirelessly, transforming the abandoned warehouse into a fully equipped rehearsal space. They dragged in second-hand sound equipment, built makeshift walls to contain the noise, and even managed to rig up a basic lighting system. As they held their first official practice session in the new space, a palpable sense of excitement filled the air. The acoustics were incredible, and they could play at full volume without fear of disturbing the neighbors. "Wow, this is amazing," Jared exclaimed, his fingers dancing across the bass strings. "Karen's never going to find us out here." Kyle nodded, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. "Exactly. We're officially off the grid, and we can focus on nailing our White House performance without any more interference from the HOA." The band members exchanged high fives, their spirits soaring as they poured their hearts into their music. For the first time in weeks, they felt truly free to pursue their dreams. As the days ticked by, the band's rehearsals only grew more intense and polished. They were determined to put on a show that would blow the White House audience away, and their hard work was paying off in spades. Finally, the big day arrived. The band members loaded up their gear and headed to the airport, their nerves and excitement palpable. "Can you believe we're actually going to the White House?" Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kyle grinned, his eyes shining with pride. "I know. It's like a dream come true. But we've earned this, you guys. Let's go out there and knock their socks off." As the band took the stage at the White House, the roar of the crowd washed over them. Kyle took a deep breath, his heart pounding with exhilaration. This was it, the moment they had been working towards for years. And as the first few notes of their set filled the air, Kyle knew that all the battles with Karen, all the struggles and setbacks, had been worth it. They were living their dream, and nothing was going to stop them.